It's been a long time since we've talked, but it's Sunday night and we're barreling towards the fall. So um, we get about 4 to 5, sometimes 6,000 people who watch these each week. So if I don't get to your question, it's not because I'm trying to avoid you. It's just because, well, frankly, a lot of people ask me questions all at the same time. So if you've got a question, fire away. It's been, like I said, it's probably been since May that we've talked, and you can listen to these on iTunes, Dog Post, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, everything. So if you're not a member of Dog Post, you should go check it out right now. We've got a great deal, dawgpost.com, and see what we have to offer. It's $1 for a month. That's a pretty good deal, I would say, and that will get you all the way through the start of fall camp. So a buck for that is a great thing. All right. Since we've last talked, there's been a lot going on. Jake Fromm has gone to the hospital for a second time. This time a little bit more serious than the first time, certainly. Uh, and in breaking his left non-throwing hand, so that was not ideal for sure. But at least it wasn't his right hand. Just got to be a little bit more careful out there in the real world. And I know that boys will be boys, but uh, more broken body parts while not playing football would not be ideal. A fair amount of recruiting questions on Demetris Robertson. If you know, you probably know more than I do because having met him when he was in a sophomore in high school, uh, I think there's been a lot of ups and downs there. Going to Cal, which was a major upset that day, picking them over Georgia and I guess Georgia Tech, but certainly over Georgia when it looked like it was done that he would go to Georgia. And now doing an announcement on Instagram next Saturday. I don't know what's going on there. It would make a lot of sense. Georgia has 2 scholarships available, so if he wanted to go to Georgia, I'm sure they would be glad to take him. I was talking with someone who covers Alabama has covered Alabama for such a long time, but they wondered out loud if Alabama would be interested in sort of him coming on board after him being committed and then dropping them and then sort of all the back and forth. But he's an exceptional player. There's a lot of positives. He didn't play a lot in 2017, so that's a negative. But you don't. It's hard to coach speed. If you're fast, you're fast. If you're people like me, you're not fast. So you can't teach that. Someone's asking, could he play this fall? My understanding is that he cannot play this fall. But again, I think a lot of people are sort of guessing what's happening versus actually knowing what's going on. The normal situation would be that you are not allowed to transfer and play right away. And, he could possibly ask for a hardship and immediately be able to play. I'm not sure that would be up to the people in Indianapolis at the NCAA. But I think people, if he goes to Georgia or West Virginia or wherever, Alabama, Texas, I anticipate that he would not play until the 2019 season. I am not completely certain if he has a release from Cal yet. Um, I haven't done a bunch of reporting on that side of the ball, but I'm not certain. I don't know for a fact personally that he has gotten a release, and I'm not sure if that's been reported anywhere else. Now, why would that matter? And this is sort of stuff that we talk about on Dog Post all the time, dawgpost.com. Right now you can go sign up for $1 for a month. I would encourage you to join the horde of people that have signed up over the last 3 months. Why does it matter if he doesn't have a release? Well, not granting a release just makes things a little bit more complicated in the grand scheme of things. In theory, Cal could restrict him from going to any particular school, particularly those that Cal will play. So that's not Georgia over the next 3 years because he still has 3 years of eligibility. He would be burning one of those years of eligibility. When I say eligibility, what I mean to say is he has 3 years to play 2 seasons. So if he's not completely healthy, he could sit out this year play at Georgia, play at West Virginia, play at Texas, wherever. So it's not like so if he's not cleared, then that makes things more complicated. I know I'm pretty certain Cal played North Carolina lately, but I'm not certain if they'll play Texas anytime soon. And you've got Alabama, Georgia, and West Virginia. So California could throw a monkey wrench into this thing, and there's just no certainty there. And then there's a lot of negativity about sort of his doing this twice now, um, with the what's the word, announcement thing. I was at the College Football Hall of Fame when Demetris did this the first time, and I was surprised when he picked Cal because it was not supposed to be Cal. Let me tell you. And but it's his life. He's got to do what he wants to do. I don't think Um, I think it's totally up to him and his family and or whoever he's kind of hanging out with to decide what they want to do. But there's plenty of intrigue left. There's no certainty at all about anything. So I know this. I know that if he does not pick Georgia, that he will be given a lot of grief online because this will have been his fourth school in 6 years, I think. Calvary Day, the other school in Savannah, California, and then wherever he goes. So he's not been super stable in terms of where he's gone. So that's Demetris. You got Las Vegas saying, hey, Georgia is considered a favorite to get to the playoff. He goes Alabama, Clemson, and then Ohio State and Georgia are tied. And I think the consensus there is Alabama's the best team in the country. That's the reason why they would have the top spot. Clemson has the easiest path for sure. I don't think there's any question about that. And then Ohio State and Georgia are both, considered two of the best teams in the country, and they have paths that make a lot of sense to get to the playoff. But no matter what, and there's a subscriber on Dog Post who gets pretty early college football lines, and which is very valuable to people at Dog Post. I mean, it's really a great community, no question, but that's the sort of stuff that makes it a lot of fun. And the the lines that are out that you can actually bet right now in Las Vegas and I guess other states in theory are, South Carolina. Georgia's giving South Carolina 14 points on the road. They're giving the Gators 14 points in Jacksonville. They're giving Tech, I think it's 19 points in Athens. And then they're giving Auburn 4 points at home, which means they are considered a slightly more than better team than Auburn by the people in Las Vegas. So you can bet those lines right now. There were some other ones too. I mean, Clemson's a huge favorite against South Carolina at home. They're 19-point favorite at home. But anyway, what it means is that Georgia has the ability to, and this is my take, all right, having done this for about 20 years now. I think they have the ability to drop a game. It kind of might not matter who they lose to or win or whatever. They're going to have to win the conference championship game. I just don't see a scenario where they get to Atlanta and if they lose, it's going to be hard to understand how they would get in if everybody else has a legitimate contender. If Clemson loses in the championship game in the ACC, I think Georgia would probably be okay. If there's no one in the top, from the Big 12 or the Pac-12, if those guys continue to not produce anybody of consequence or that have multiple losses, I think that's another scenario where Georgia could get in. But the national media is going to be beating the drum for Georgia and Alabama to get into the playoff no matter who wins the championship game. Obviously, Alabama didn't have to win the championship game last year, and they still got in. Georgia will not be able to do that. They will have to win the East, which they should do relatively, if you want to say easily, but they will have to do that, and then they'll get to Atlanta, and it will deter. If they win, they're in. If they lose and it, is kind of a funky loss or it's tight, or they're playing a team that's undefeated and they're undefeated, then you start, that's a different scenario. But the last time, if I'm not mistaken, the last time two undefeateds got to Atlanta was 2009. I'm trying to remember if the Gators were undefeated. I think they were. I think it was number 1 versus number 2 with Alabama and Florida. And there was no playoff, or the Gators would have gotten in, I think. So, for Georgia, the biggest thing is win your games that you need to win. South Carolina, Florida, Auburn, Tennessee, but really the Eastern games matter the most, whatever can get you to Atlanta, and then you're in the quarterfinals. Here's a question about Georgia playing Clemson in the coming future. And the important part to remember here with Clemson and Georgia is I'm sure they'll play in the future. And someone says someone says that there's been reporting on this. I'm not sure who's actually reported it. That's a reporter. Maybe someone wants to, let me know. I'll try to read it. And I've not seen an actual report. I've seen people talking about it on Twitter, which is not the same thing. That doesn't mean it won't come true. I'm not calling anybody out. Let's not start all that. What I'm saying is, just because people are talking about it on Twitter certainly doesn't make it true. And I have not seen a report from a legitimate outlet, so I don't know. Maybe I've missed it in these last couple of weeks. But with that said, if Georgia's playing a 3-game series against Clemson, there's only a particular time where they could pull that off. And the issue there, if you read what we were hearing a few weeks ago, is that Clemson and Georgia are both playing Notre Dame quite a bit over these next sort of 7 years. Georgia plays them in 2019, and in 2020, Georgia's playing Virginia. So that means that the two schools will not be playing before 2020. I mean, you're not going to move the Virginia game because of trying to schedule Clemson, and you're not going to, obviously, you're not going to get rid of a home game with Notre Dame. So when you start looking at the scenarios for Georgia, they can take a big name opponent in the future for sure. But the problem is that in 2021, Georgia has, and I've reported on this, Georgia has a couple of $1.5 million contracts in 2021. I just don't think they're going to move those contracts. Now, no one at Georgia has said that to me, but, it just seems odd. So 2021 seems unlikely. 2022, on the other hand, 2023 and 2024, those would work. So you're talking about Georgia and Clemson playing, and that would be in about 5 years. So that's not exactly right around the corner. 2022, Georgia does not have an opening school that anyone is aware of. In 2023, they play Indiana State, but we don't know the date on that. And in 2024 would be the year that Georgia would go back to the Dome in theory. So I could see a scenario where in 2020, let me make sure I got this right. In the odd year, 2023, Georgia would probably host Clemson. In the even year, Georgia would probably have to go to Clemson. Now, Clemson, on the other hand, has Notre Dame scattered through their schedule, and it's kind of hit or miss with them. In 2022, Clemson has 4 non-conference games booked up already. So they would have to move a game, and they could move Furman if they really wanted to. They could move Furman, and they could move Wofford. But Clemson is booked up. So there are going to have to be some things moved. Now, I find it hard to believe, in the conversations that I've had, I find it hard to believe that Georgia's going to move off of 2019, 2021, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I find it hard to believe that they're going to move off of, I find it impossible to believe that they're going to play in 2019. I find it very improbable that they would play in 2020. So you're talking about 2021, when Georgia already has about $3 million worth of contracts for San Jose State and UAB, and Clemson does not have an opener. So that would mean someone would have to move around on that one. 2022, Georgia is available, but Clemson is booked up, so they would have to move Furman. And in 2023, Georgia's got some availability, but again, Clemson's got Notre Dame, and they would have to move Wofford. And in that scenario, Clemson would be playing the entire ACC slate, Georgia, South Carolina, and Notre Dame. I find that hard to believe. So you could see a scenario where Georgia and Clemson could open up in 2024. I just, right now, unless something really changes, and again, if someone wants to point out where the actual report is, not some clown on Twitter, then let me know. But it's a little bit hard for me to believe this second that they have struck some, they're going to have to move games. And you can move games, but it's not like the past. In the past, you'd move games, it would be $250,000 or something like that. Now, the UAB and other game that Georgia is hosting, those are $1.5 million contracts that Georgia will have to pay or move. And the other thing to keep in mind about future Georgia scheduling is they can't just, I mean, they play UCLA in 2025 and 2026. So it might just be that Clemson, who you can play them in a one-off in 2024, but you can play anybody in a one-off in Atlanta. So it, Clemson's going to have to make the moves in this scenario because Clemson's booked up. And they've got Notre Dame. If I were them, I would not want to play Notre Dame, Georgia, and South Carolina all in the same season, along with 8 conference games. But maybe that's where this is all going. Maybe it's going to everyone's playing, 11 legitimate games, and the 12th one is a throwaway. I just know ADs and coaches too well. They're not going to do that. They want the revenue, and they want the wins. If you're not a member of Dog Post, you certainly should be. It's $1 right now for a month. Go sign up. That'll get you all the way almost to the middle part of fall camp at Georgia. Next weekend, we'll be here on Dog Post. And Georgia will go to next Tuesday, the 17th. Georgia will be going for media days. Tomorrow, Tom Crean is meeting with a few reporters. The Monday, the 9th, and then again, Georgia will go at media days on the 17th. We don't know yet who will be at media days for Georgia, but I anticipate it will probably be older players, which it usually is. If I had to guess, I would say probably Lamont, Galliard, maybe. I don't know. I'm not even going to attempt to guess, but yeah, there's a lot. Who would y'all like to see Georgia play? J.R. Reed. Yes, I would say it probably will be J.R. Reed. Who would y'all like to see Georgia play in the future? That's another question. Can you see Elijah Holyfield having a breakout year this season? I don't think he'll have a breakout year, but I think he'll be very productive. I mean, everybody wants a breakout season from guys, but the thing about it is that with Zamir on the roster and DeAndre Swift, if Zamir doesn't really get rolling, then maybe you could see Elijah getting a lot of touches. Elijah seems to be a very good second half back, and he is, maybe he's a very good second half back because he's been running, the other guys have been running through guys the whole season or through the whole game. But I think at the end of the Rose Bowl, he was in that game late. I got nothing bad to say about Elijah Holyfield. I think he's smart, and but he's not like anybody. He's not any different than anybody else at Georgia. He's going to have to fight his way to playing time. And the reality is that DeAndre Swift looks like he's going to be a starter at least for some time. And you've got a magnificent player in Zamir White. Not to mention the other running backs at Georgia. I mean, there's just not a lot of bad running backs. Do you think Georgia will finish top 3 in recruiting? Well, it will depend on the close, but they've got the one thing that didn't necessarily look like they were going to get, they got, which was a quarterback, and not really just some guy. They got a legit top 300 player in the country. So That helps a lot. Um, Top three, I don't know, but they're not going to be. They look like they were in striking distance last year of a top class, and they just buried it at the end. And I don't think anybody saw it coming that they would run the table with everybody, but they did. And it was their first number one class ever. It really has been Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama who have separated themselves from the rest of college football in the recruiting scheme of things. Um, how long they can continue that, I don't know. But those three head coaches are very good recruiters. Any word on wearing black jerseys for a game we never did last year? And someone else is asking if I'm going to the Georgia LSU game. I go to every game and cover it. Um, I don't think that they're going to stop wearing black, but you could have seen that. I mean, Kirby may have just said, "Look, we're going to wear these black jerseys the first year. I'm going to get that out of the way. I'm not going to hear talk about the black jerseys and this, alleged curse. He's going to use it for recruiting." But they just never ran into a time last year, I guess, that they were going to wear it. I mean, I'm trying to remember who they play the week before. They played Kentucky the week before Georgia Tech last year, I think it was. They could have worn them at a lot of different times, um, but they may only wear them every other year, and they might not wear them anytime soon. But they've got them. Obviously, they wore them for G Day, and I think if you got them, wear them. I wouldn't not wear them. Everybody knows that it's Georgia unless you goof with the helmets. Well, someone's saying that Jake Fromm is sporting a very high tech, expensive cast. I have no doubt that he is getting the complete medical treatment that that you would need in this case. Um, but he just, look, if he gets hurt again off the field, people are going to go straight up crazy. And I'm not saying that's right or not, but he has an active lifestyle off the field. He hunts. And that means that you're carrying things to kill creatures. You just got to be careful. That's all. Who would I like to see Georgia schedule home and home with? Well, certainly they've gotten it done with UCLA. That's interesting. I don't really get, I don't really know that there's a lot of places that would be so great. When you talk about Colorado, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, um, those were not the most intriguing places to go visit. Um, but to play USC in the Coliseum would be interesting. To play Penn State maybe in Happy Valley, um, maybe Michigan. Ohio State doesn't do a lot for me. I've been to the Horseshoe. It's fine. It's like all the other stadiums in the SEC. What people down here sort of maybe don't appreciate so much is that is how good it is in the conference. I mean, to go play at LSU, to play at Neyland, to play in Tuscaloosa. I mean, these are places that are 100 to play in Sanford. I mean, these are all places that are cathedrals of the game. And when you look around the country, there's just not a lot of places that are like the SEC. I mean, you basically have Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten. You've got in the Pac-12, you've got maybe um, USC, UCLA. Um, there's just there's just not a lot of places around the country that really give a shit the way that everybody down here does. And so it doesn't really turn me on, so to speak, to do it. And the other thing is too that you have to really take into consideration is when are you going to play these games? I mean, Georgia can't play everybody. I mean, you can't play Clemson and then also play SC or UCLA or whoever all in the same season. There's only so many. There's only so many games to go around. There's only so many who are legitimate. I would not go too far away from what you've got. I mean, Clemson's not that far down the road. You play Georgia Tech every single year. Georgia hasn't played Florida State in I mean, who knows how long. So some of these sort of natural rivalries, if you want to call them that, I don't think they're really rivalries. Georgia has three rivals, but if you want to play Florida State, Clemson, Miami is down there. They're not so far away. You know, once you get to Oklahoma and Texas, past that in the Big 12, I mean, did anyone really care when Georgia played TCU in the Liberty Bowl? I don't think they. I mean, most people did not. So I think you're going to see a lot of bigger games with opponents that Georgia's not used to playing because they're going to be playing in bowl games like the Orange Bowl. Obviously, they could play Oklahoma again next year in the Sugar Bowl or Texas, but you know, Georgia for such a long time played so many out of conference foes consistently. And that was South Carolina, Clemson, and Georgia Tech. They played those three every year for a long time, and it South Carolina's in the league now. Georgia obviously plays Tech every single season. You know, Clemson is playing in a different league that's playing 8 games a season as well. So there's only so many games to go around. And if you're Greg McGarity or whoever the athletic director is, do you really want to ask your fan base to go completely across the country, or do this or do that? Virginia Tech does nothing for me. Penn State is fine, doesn't really do a lot. Ohio State's the same way. Michigan would maybe be interesting in September or August. Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia just played Oklahoma. So I think the traditional SEC schools, it's just different, and the schools take it very seriously. Nobody's going to get jazzed up to watch Georgia play. No matter how many of y'all keep saying Oregon, uh, nobody's gonna fly out there. I mean, that's gonna be maybe 5 or 6 thousand Georgia fans. That's it, and it's a long way. It's a long way. Playing at Washington would be interesting, only to play in that stadium because it's so interesting. But if I were Georgia, I would take the Florida model. I would never leave where you're at because you've got Atlanta right there. I would not play in Charlotte. I would play everything in Athens. I would play everything in Atlanta because you know you're all if to get to where you got to go, you have to play in Atlanta. The longer that the more familiar you are with the dome, the better. The Dome hosts the national championship. It's going to host the Peach Bowl. It's going to host a lot of big games. So you want to get used to it. I mean, Bank of America Stadium is not hosting anything. You could maybe play in Orlando, maybe, or Tampa. But like as a one-off, I mean, you're going to go play Miami and Orlando? Why would you do that? You just mean the details of it. I think there's no way any details will come out. I think that that's all there is to it. He is going to be protected as much as possible, which is Georgia's prerogative. And it's his life. He needs to be able to do whatever he wants to do. But when you're out there, you just can't break your hand. I mean, people are gonna freak out. He could have broken his right hand if you think about it. I mean, if it was a freak accident, why couldn't he have broken his right hand? So, but then once you say anything negative about Jake Fromm, people just kind of freak out unnecessarily. By the way, he's not above criticism, and if you're going to have an active lifestyle with hunting, etc., or I, I'm not a big water sports guy myself, but if you're going to go into the ocean, you got to know that you can get hit with waves and they can make your eyes red or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're going to be active, these things are going to happen. Thankfully for him, it wasn't anything super serious. But this is twice in the off season. That's a lot. Can he work out with a fractured hand? He can throw because it's not his throwing hand. But lifting weights, etc., I just find it hard to believe that he would be able to lift weights with a fractured hand. You could maybe modify some stuff, but it's not the same. I mean, it's just not the same. But it's not such a big deal that there's anything to really waste a lot of time about on it. I mean, he's going to be the starting quarterback, I think, and that's all there is to it. Sometimes I can't read things because when y'all post them, The whole thing doesn't come through. Record prediction. I just don't. Um, I'm just not sure who they'll lose to. You know, I don't think they'll go undefeated, but I don't know who they'll lose to. I think the most likely is Auburn, maybe at LSU. Yeah, so someone's saying, well, Kirby took kids on the lake today. That's right, but I guess what I don't understand is, or what I'm trying to say is, just because something happened once doesn't mean it will happen again. Just because, I drove a car and got into an accident doesn't mean the next time I'll drive I'll get into an accident. But it sure as hell meant I got into an accident last time, so I'm going to maybe check my speed a little bit. In this case, he may have been doing nothing wrong. I have no idea. But that I have to talk about it shows how antsy people are. And that he literally broke his hand, that's not a positive, right? It may have been a freak thing. It's not a good thing. So, you don't want to get injured. You don't want to get injured off the football field. End of story. He's still allowed to go to Dairy Queen, etc. And yeah, Ben Cleveland got hit by a deer. I have done that twice and wrecked a car both times. There's just nothing you can do about that, but that's not the same thing as this. Yeah, I mean, Jake needs to be able to do whatever it is that he's doing. What I'm trying to say is he needs to be able to live his life. He just needs to understand that, and I'm sure he does, that occasionally when you break your hand, people are going to get freaked out, and got to be careful out there. Do you think that Georgia will have to win the SEC to get into the playoff? Uh, I think I talked about that a little bit earlier. I think they're going to have to win the conference unless something kind of works out differently. But that's a long way away. Any thoughts on defensive line recruiting? That's the sort of stuff we talk about on Dogpost, DAWGPOST.com. They're not doing as well as you'd like to see them do, but it's early, and let's just see. But the trend is not ideal. Talking about Zamir White with kickboxing, I didn't think he looked as good as a lot of people did. It looked like he had never kickboxed before, which I've never done either. I'm not interested in getting kicked. So I didn't think he looked so swift doing that, if you will. But I've not heard anything other than nothing or positive about Zamir and his development. And so my guess is he will play this fall. My guess is it will be in September, but we will just have to see how how good he is when he does get onto the field. He's a special player. I've just not seen a lot of guys like him out there. I mean, he can really play. All right, this has been the roundtable. Excuse me, this has been the Dean Legge Show on Dogpost. Go to dogpost.com, DAWGPOST.com for more. And I'm going to try to end all of these all at the same time.